Hello and welcome, Exiles. Galvanic field self-shock problem has been solved. Not by me, but by a viewer of my channel, Beaups, and then also cosmicbob got me looking into this again, as well as some other helpful people like holymessiah in my chat. There's quite a few people that have been trying out Galvanic field since then, and the way they solved it is actually quite cool, and I want to share it with you guys and try to make a build with it, because I think it's a very interesting concept, although it is a little bit on the this is kind of weird, I'm not sure galvanic fields should work this way sort of thing, because it is weird to think that you can inflict galvanic field on yourself. So to start things off with, you'll notice I'm using Scales of Justice. This is one of a few methods you can use to make this work. Effectively, what this does is it gives you unaffected by shock while you have it equipped, which means if I weapon swap to a weapon that doesn't have the unaffected by shock, and I inflict my shock while I have this Voltaic Rift out, I can inflict a big shock right then. That's what Galvanic Field is judging its shock effect based on, is the shock it inflicts initially, and then when I weapon swap back to something like this, that shock is no longer applied to me. So one of the biggest problems with Galvanic Field and this self-shock was always the issue of how do we deal with this large 105 shock on ourselves? It's making us take over double damage. It's going to make our character suicidal. It's going to make us a glass cannon. How do we make this build not be paper? And this is one of the ways to do it. You'll see what happens is I have Galvanic Field. I trigger my Galvanic Field. I have Vessel of Victor that says use when shocked. And then I have on my character some spectral spirits, these three guys here. And what happens is when I weapon swap, these guys instantly die. When I weapon swap back, they come back. And the idea is if you combine this with a heartbound loop, which makes you take phys damage when your minions die, for each of these minions, I'll take some physical damage. But I have a Watcher's Eye that is making me take phys as lightning. So the idea is with this Watcher's Eye, with these minions, if I just have a little bit of chance to shock on myself, I will take that try 3 times when I weapon swap. So actually, I have 2 replica reckless defenses. I think I'm going to want to end up increasing this, but right now, each time one of these guys dies, it has a 20% chance to inflict a shock. Now, the important thing is, how do we get the shock to be a big shock? These guys dying, they're inflicting a very small amount of damage. The shock they're going to inflict isn't good. And what happens is, Vessel of Victor, with the trigger when shock, actually activates its better shock that it's inflicting on us. It starts out at base 50%, and with our character, we have a overshock node, which gives us 40% ailment effect, which actually makes this inflict a 70% shock on us. And then if I get a little bit more, I can also scale up to 105. You'll see with the Voltaic Rift here, we have a plus 40% maximum shock. Right now, we could get up to a 90% shock if I had the ailment effect for it. The thing is, with Galvanic Field, you can actually snapshot this. So even though our character isn't using a Voltaic Rift, we can snapshot the higher shock to get the higher damage multiplier for Galvanic Field. Galvanic Field has a multiplier that says, for every 5% shock you inflict, you deal 15% more damage. So at 100% shock value, you're getting 300% more damage on this skill. Now, it can only target an enemy once every 0.5 seconds, but it's hitting very hard, and with the additional chain you can add into it from something like the enchant, you can actually do some shenanigans with Hydrosphere to get more than 2 hits a second. You can actually get a few more by essentially having an Arcanist brand right over a Hydrosphere. This is all stuff that I learned from Beaups, from cosmicbob and people. And it's very interesting technology to make this skill function quite well. So you'll see the first time I weapon swapped, it didn't trigger their Galvanic Field. This time, I have 20% shock between 3 guys, so it hit this time. You'll see it's a 70% shock because we have that 40% ailment effect. And we can weapon swap back, and this will remain as long as our Galvanic Field duration is. Right now, I just have a random increased duration. This is a level 68 character, full disclosure. This is not set up for anything yet. This is just basically, I got to level 68. I could equip a quiver with a bunch of decks on it that would give me the dex requirement for my Voltaic Rift. Fun thing is, I didn't realize you could do this, but if you have not enough decks for a Voltaic Rift, but you have enough decks on the weapon swap, you still have the weapon equipped. It doesn't brick anything to do the weapon swap like this. So even though Voltaic Rift has a high dex requirement, I don't actually have to get all the way to 212 decks. I only have to get to about 100 because I can get about 90 decks on a quiver. With a synth quiver with decks on it, and a max roll dex, I can craft all attributes. You get a decent dex roll. It's kind of an interesting way to do it. But That is the tech. You cast Galvanic Field, and then these Spectral Spirits, they inflict fizz damage on you. You take it as lightning, and that gives you the chance to proc the Galvanic Field. Now, actually, you'll see right there, we missed quite a few times in a row. I only have 20% shock per minion death right now. I want to get another replica, another replica defense. We'll see about that and setting it up correctly, but I'm quite excited to make a build around this. I think it's a very cool skill, very aesthetically pleasing to my eyes. And the fun thing I'm trying to do with it is I'm trying to scale its AoE to the moon. You'll notice right now, whoops, I didn't mean to click at that earlier. That was kind of bricked that actually a little bit. Since I bricked it and I pressed it myself, you'll see this is a smaller circle. That's because there is another factor with Galvanic Field, which is that you get radius per the amount of shock you have. I actually have, you'll see, I have 140 quality, or no, not 140, 120 quality on this, which for every 20 quality, I get 0.1 meter radius per 10% shock. So if we get this all the way up to 105 shock, this skill itself will give a whopping 7 meter base radius. For PoE terms, that is massive. I don't really have much AoE investment. I have 2 AoE nodes here and 1 AoE node from here. So I have 26% AoE, and right now with the 70% shock we have, you'll see 70% shock we have. This is our radius. It's literally screen wide, and that is before we have AoE investment. That's before we get it all the way to the 105 shock. So we'll see. We're going to try to get some astronomically large AoE between Diality's quality and Ash's quality and an enhance. Probably just memeing a little bit too much. I probably shouldn't do the enhance. I should probably have a real damage support, but I'm going to see how big we can get this circle to be. Anyways, that is Galvanic Field and the way that people crack the code to solve the 105 shock. And it's not just Scales of Justice. You can do this also with Unaffected by Shock boots. And the way that works is if you have the Unaffected by Shock boots, you have a dex requirement or an int requirement or a strength requirement that bricks your boots being equipped when you weapon swap for the shock. That is the other way you can deal with it. So essentially, if I weapon swapped and it unequipped my boots because of an attribute requirement, like basically an attribute difference between my main hand and my offhand, that would also work because the Unaffected by Shock just needs to not be, it just can't be applied to you when you're inflicting the shock. You want to have that big shock hit your character, and then when you weapon swap back, you don't have the shock. See, when we have without our Scales of Justice, 70% shock, we're going to get completely roasted. But we want to have our main hand be this stuff, so that way we can shield charge around and not have the shock get us killed. So, all right, I'll do one quick clear for Blood Aqueducts again, just to showcase again how it works. Right now, again, this character is not set up to be like anything. I just realized this is another thing that can happen is I need to get my flash duration and stuff fixed. I haven't crafted a flash belt. I just have my leveling belt on still. But essentially, if you inflict the shock before you have your Vessel of Victor, that is the level of shock it will get. It won't be particularly large. But anyways, yeah, I want to give this. I'll give you guys a quick showcase of what it looks like running through Blood Aqueducts again. Did I get shocked a single time doing that? Failed because too many requests. What on earth? I did click it, right? Did I break something? What did I break? Click the flask manually? I am not sure what I break there, but I must have messed something up. Point is, right now you can kind of see the clear is, it has like a target limit, so I'm going to need to either add in more chains or add in, the trigger mod is not working right now for some reason. I don't know what was going on with my percent chance of shock, but basically I probably need to, increase it, because right now it's not high enough or whatever it is. Still pretty scuffed setup, but that is the idea of the character. I just PK'd myself with my spirits. Wow. I'm not sure why it was not triggering. I'm not 100% sure what I've been, what I had bricked. I need the Period of Lightning on for the Watcher's Eye mod. I didn't take off the Watcher's Eye, did I? Didn't. Something I did in the zone messed it up. I'm not sure exactly what I did. It should be working just fine, though. What did I do? I don't know. I'm gonna confuse myself now. Because, for whatever reason, it's not proccing. That is not what's supposed to be happening. Try this one more time. Okay, it's working now. I don't freaking know what I did. But anyways, still a very scuffed setup. I'm obviously gonna level this ward, actually try to like fine tune it, get it working properly. But for the time being, it is, I have no clue what I did. This is not proccing. I don't quite know why. Something went wrong with the Fuse Shock. I'll have to figure out what's going on there. I'm not 100% sure. But hopefully this demonstrates the concept or the idea of how to solve the self-shock problem. Because you can't get a good shock without Vessel of Victors, and there were other cases where most other ways to do it bricked the way to set up, and this is the one that actually really works, and works in a somewhat clean way. Obviously, I need to get more chance to shock on myself. I need to level up the character. I need to fill out the tree a bit more and actually get the character operational, working correctly. But that is the idea behind the Galvanic self-shock. I'm not really sure what happened there at trying to run this Blood Aqueducts with the proc. Right now, it seems like my use when you become shocked mod is not proccing from the vessel. I don't know why. I didn't take out my replica Restless Defenses. Something weird happened. I mentally, I'm not sure what I did. I feel like I bricked something somewhere, and I just don't know what it is. It's gonna drive me crazy. Oh, it goes there now. I don't know what it is. Did something with my resistances? I don't think it would be, but maybe it would be if I have high enough max res that somehow prohibits the self-shock. Might be mitigating too much of the self-damage with my high max lightning res. Potentially. I'm trying to think if that makes sense. Does that make sense? It could be having too much lightning res. Because I was planning to do a bunch of max res with this jewel right here. This is like 10 max lightning res. I was going to end up doing a Purity of Lightning plus a melding to get like some just insane max res. But right now, it seems like that might be a little bit scuffed if that is enough mitigation where it doesn't proc the self-shock from the Heartbound loop. Granted, I could quality the Heartbound loop to make the fizz damage a little bit higher, and then add on the higher fizz taken as. That might be enough to make the difference. I'm not sure if that's actually what's preventing this from occurring. I don't know. If it is, it could be that. I'm trying to understand what would be the reason it's not proccing the shock. The only thing I can think of right now is I just got a bunch of max lightning res, but I didn't have that issue before. Regardless, I'll figure it out. I'll figure out what it is. It might be I have too much mitigation, and maybe I'm just deleting too much of the self-lightning damage. I didn't think the number mattered, but maybe it does. Maybe it does a little bit. We'll figure it out. Anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed this little video on Galvanic Field and my plans, my attempted plans to make this. I'll make more videos on it when I have a more concrete character setup. I just wanted to share how beaups, cosmicbob, how they solved the self-shock issue and making the Galvanic Field a much more fluid actual skill. Beaups will like doing it with Scales of Justice. Cosmicbob like doing it with a boot swap and then having some duration gems that you could basically snapshot the duration on Galvanic Field. Some interesting stuff like that. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed. As always, thanks for watching, Exiles. Take care and out.